2-minute meta in Dawntrail. Ooh. So let's be real here. The 2-minute meta is definitely a thing in Dawntrail, and I know that there was a lot of speculation of, hey, is the 2-minute meta burst window going away, or are we moving away from it to something else? And I can pretty confidently say, no way. Especially if we look at the new skills in Dawntrail, even if we just focus on the healers, fundamentally Scholar gets to keep Chain Stratagem at 2 minutes cooldown, which is going to turn into Baneful Impaction skill that is a follow-up chain skill for the Scholar themselves. And I know that chaining off of Chain Stratagem is a chain skill, is kind of funny to say, but even the Scholar, you could argue, is going even deeper into that, which I know Dissipation, Alt Energy Drains, very much a thing. Or for Astrologian, that got a total rework for its kit, and maybe this is an even better example of how they're like going into it. Divination is a 2-minute cooldown timer that leads into Oracle, which is a 600 potency burst of damage off the GCD, which you'd obviously want to fit into that Divination window because you'd want to get the most out of it. That's just basic maths, truly. But more than that, Astrologian, even with their reworked card system, is going to be doing what is called an Astral Draw during their opener and every 2 minutes after, and that is going to be very interesting because Astral Draw specifically, which lines up with the 2-minute window, provides them with their damage boost card for one party member, but also the off-GCD Lord of Crowns, which is another off-GCD damage ability like Oracle, which they want to toss out. And so this was actually Astro feedback that was given to the developers in that they really wanted more consistency with their Lord of Crowns draw and how much of a DPS variance there could be without drawing Lord of Crowns. So now every 2 minutes for Astrologian, it's going to involve Astral Draw, Divination, Oracle, Lord of Crowns, and tossing the balance card onto melee DPS, which if we really want to tear into melee DPS, and why that's important, historically melee DPS have been ahead of other DPS like Summoner, Red Mage, range physical DPS, and so even that you could argue is optimized. Yes, Black Mage I know is a thing, but generally speaking melee DPS, if you look at the logs, is higher than ranged, and so even that was optimized. Also, for the sake of funsies, yeah, I could definitely see Astrologians probably try and hold onto the Umbral damage card, the Spear, until they get near the next 2-minute damage window and then toss it on their highest range DPS, just to milk that out a bit more as well. Heck, even White Mage using Presence of Mind now gets Glare 4, which is a super powerful blasting spell, so they started blasting, and then Sage gets a 60-second off GCD blast named Psyche. So we really have gone to the point where even in the healer toolkits, the 2-minute meta is super duper entrenched, and that's without even looking at the DPS, where if you look at Dragoon, you could definitely see how the 2-minute meta was looked at that. Frankly, you could look at almost any DPS and see how like their skill sets have definitely shifted more into that. Like a lot of the DPS that I went through that I have coverage of on this channel, as well as on my website, fx.gg, that I'm going to get as much text information as possible onto, you can definitely see that there is an incredibly heavy emphasis on off-GCD skills, new off-GCD skills that are like chained off of other buffs and stuff like that, that would fit into the 2-minute meta window. Now, we kind of need to ask the question, where do we go from here? And I guess that depends on if you view the 2-minute meta as a good thing or a bad thing. So if you view it as a bad thing, me posting this video is probably super demoralizing, and you're like, oh god, why are we in this 2-minute meta for another expansion? Which is totally fair if you didn't enjoy it and like don't want it. Like, I totally get you, I really do. For me personally, because I know people will want me to ask, I actually genuinely don't particularly care much one way or another, even though, yeah, I remember how funny Endwalker Astrologian was, or I guess I should say in this video, current Astrologian, how it functioned during the like 2-minute window during like Pinax window. That was kind of funny. I definitely do expect more of that, where they're gonna throw a mechanic during 2-minute windows, like, oh, there's another 2-minute window during Pangenesis that's very nice. Like, there's a whole lot of fun stuff here. Oh god, the casting is making me appreciate that things like Glare 4 actually have like free raid mobility for stuff like that, not gonna lie. But I'm thinking back to the history of this game, like memes aside, we have always revolved around buff windows. In particular, Ninja's Trick Attack was the most referenced raid buff window, and it was coming up every 60 seconds. You had a Trick Attack window every 60 seconds, and you tried to dump everything with everyone in those windows. And would that align with like every minute, 60 seconds, or every 2 minutes, 120 seconds? Well, kinda. That was what the community accepted, and it wasn't until recently that it was really raised up to 2 minutes in general. Like, Ninja had its damage buff raised and reworked into 2-minute window with Mug, and Mug in Dawntrail is getting changed to a new skill name that I forget off the top of my head, but it starts with like a D, but it functions the same as Mug does today. It's a 2-minute buff, and I think that's what is really what led the developers down this path, is years of saying that all the players want their buffs to be aligned in here, and then saying, alrighty, we're gonna just align all of the jobs and let them all burst at the same time. So like, how to say it, like, if I look at the feedback given to the developers, like, there was always a consistent feedback provided to the developers involving, hey, it'd be nice if all of these buffs could align. And this even went so far as when a job, say, had like a 90-second personal damage buff, they'd try and hold it back until it could be in that 2-minute window, just because the stacking buff effect is such a prominent and such a powerful mathematical effect. Because, okay, you have your base potency, and then you throw on that buff to yourself, and that buffs up your potency, obviously. And then what if you added that potency and had another potency buff, like a chain stratagem? What if you had like an astro divination on that? What if you had like a monk's brotherhood? And then really it was this stacking effect on top of stacking effect on top of stacking effect that really got strong. Because, okay, a 5% buff, but when you have 10% on that, and then you have chain stratagem, and then you have dragon's battle litany, so you're going to crit more often. You see where I'm going with this? We always have kind of really wanted things to align. And so that's what I was kind of saying before, is this really is what led the developers down this path, is years of seeing that and then saying, well, alrighty, we will align all the jobs and just let them all burst at the same time, so be it. Like, how to say it? Like, I'm trying to imagine if there was, say, a 90-second Black Mage buff in Dawntrail that was, say, added, or say Ley Lines was put to 90 seconds in Dawntrail. Would we see Black Mages seriously not hold it back 30 seconds longer to get into that 2-minute burst window if, say, they had a Scholar, if they had an Astrologe in the party, you had, like, a Dragoon's Battle Litany, and maybe a Dragoon used, like, the Dragon Eye buff on you? Like, would you seriously see the Black Mage not hold it back for that? And I'm pretty sure, pretty excessively confidently sure that the Black Mage would hold back a 90-second Ley Lines for 2-minute window. In fact, if I think about Bard, and one criticism is that Bard's coda system, which goes into Radiant Finale and in Dawntrail is being expanded even more into like Radiant Encore, is that they do give the party a larger buff and will do more damage with their Radiant Encore ability in Dawntrail, based on how many coda they have. They acquire coda by playing a particular song. And then Bard, however, because of that, isn't going to obviously cycle through all 3 songs during their opener, or could you imagine a world if they did? And there is feedback, even with the Bard, that, hey, is that necessarily the best thing for the Bard? Like, why not just give the Bard an ability during their opener where they get all the coda immediately, just so that it's more fair? And that's kind of playing into that, hey, well, 2-minute kind of thing. Even though I think that is one of the very rare examples of a skill that doesn't really have its full impact in the opener, but it does, like, the next 2 minutes. It's kind of tricky to find examples that kind of break the mold now. And I do feel like this is definitely worth further discussion. Like, when I view it from that angle, it's tough to deny where the developers got their logic on this from, but flicking through all the skills and footage I captured from what I played during the media tour, there is zero doubt in my mind that the 2-minute meta is 100% entrenched and staying in Dawntrail. Now, whether that changes or not going forward from here into 8.0 and beyond is something I couldn't tell you, but it's definitely going to be a fixture of raiding through Dawntrail.